Well, hello and welcome back to Kindled. I am your host, Haley. So happy to have you here today. And I'm very excited for you to hear this episode, this conversation I got to have with Kimberly Thomson, who you may otherwise know from Instagram as Granny's Got Greens. She is the real deal. She is a Titus 2 woman who is going to bring so much wisdom and encouragement to you if you follow her on Instagram. And I love that we got to sit down and have this little conversation, get to know her better. She's awesome. Mom of 5 girls. She's a grandma. She's known as Granny. That's where the name came from. And she loves plants. You're going to see in the background, if you're watching on YouTube, she has a ton of tiny little plant starts behind her. And so she gets to now take care of little plants on her wall, as well as I know that she's very involved with her grandkids. But it's just really encouraging to hear from a woman who valued and treasured her time as a mom and to kind of glean wisdom from her on now the back end of her journey through motherhood. And I loved this conversation. It's a feel-good episode, and I know you're going to enjoy it. I want to say thank you to our sponsors of today's episode, and that is Foundation Worldview, Good Book Mom, and We Heart Nutrition. Could not have this podcast without them, so check them out. All of the discount codes for those companies are in the show notes below. In the meantime, come find me as you're listening on Instagram at haley.kindled and follow along. Be sure and leave a rating and review on the podcast if you haven't done that. Thank you to the many of you who already have. It helps the show so much. All right, here's my conversation with Kimberly Thomson. Today on Kindled, I am chatting with Kimberly Thomson. Kimberly, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for inviting me.
People on Instagram may know you as Granny's Got Greens. So tell us where that name came from.
I started on Instagram with this account because I had a bunch of houseplants and I was having fun learning about them and potting them and doing all the things. And I just have grandkids. They call me Granny, and I thought Granny's Got Greens was cute. That's really where it started.
Very cute. So when did you start your Instagram account? Because I only found you a couple months ago, but you've been around for a while.
I have been on there. I would have really had to look back to what year. I think it was 21 that I started this gigalicious. And then I've been posting other things since about 23, the late 23. But I really just started these Granny Talks reels, which is where you found me, in March.
Oh, okay. So that's like pretty new.
Yes, very new.
So is that when your account kind of took off?
Yeah.
Right around March.
Yes, I have been posting for well over a year. I do Mondays I've called it Granny's Gold. And it was just different things, meals, how to get laundry done, how did I host when I had a large family, things like that. And they didn't really go anywhere, but I had fun doing them. And if I saw people I knew out, they would say, "Oh, I love your Granny's Gold." And I would just laugh because that was great. And I just decided to sit down and just talk for a minute and a half. And I posted just a couple of them, and they took off. I just have no explanation.
Well, I think I might have an explanation because I think so many women are just looking for like that practical advice, that Titus 2 mentorship on all the topics that motherhood encompasses, from, like you said, hosting to, how do I handle boredom with my children, and have I lost my identity in my motherhood? All of these things that you address in your little 90-second shorts are the thing that so many women are just hungry for and thirsty for, that kind of wisdom.
There has been a shockingly overwhelming response to them, honestly. People in DMs, I just have been shocked. I thought there would be a little bit more of a turnoff because of my views, because they're not gentle parenting. They're not wear your baby 24 hours a day. They're not so child-led. They are disciplined. I'm using the words train and obey. And I just was surprised that there was a market, I guess, or an appetite for it, right?
Yeah. And I mean, I totally understand that because those words are the hot button words, the ones that get the gentle parenting community kind of onto your trail and, evaluating your words and talking about how you've got toxic advice and all of these things. But I think that so many women have already been down the road of gentle parenting. They've already been down the child-led everything. And they're like, okay, well, I'm burnt out. It's not working. I don't love being with my kids. Is there another option, perhaps? Is there another strategy? How else could I think about this? And so your advice comes at a good time for a lot of women.
Yeah, I think what I have seen is just a lot of women that they're not enjoying their kids. You can tell it. You can see them in the grocery store, at the restaurant, anywhere you go. They're not enjoying the kids. The kids aren't having much fun, and no one around them is having much fun. And my one daughter, the youngest just got married in September, and she had been after me. We would have these conversations, and she'd say, "You need to put that on Instagram." And I said, "Nobody wants to hear this." And she just argued and argued. So then when I posted those couple and said, "Hey, people are watching these," she said, "I have been telling you this." So I
Uh-huh.
think you're right. I think that they are frustrated and some of this isn't working. And
Yeah.
they're like, well, try something else. And I don't know.
Yeah. So when you said you've gotten an overwhelming response, I am curious, like, are the DMs like people wanting to be, mentored essentially, asking you questions that you're surprised they're asking someone on Instagram because you would think they would maybe have an older woman in their life that they could ask those to?
They're everything from, "This is so great. This is so encouraging. This sounds like my mom," to, "I don't have anyone in my life who's saying this. I don't know what I'm doing. And all I've been told is that my parents did it wrong and nothing, I don't know where to go." So it's really wide ranging. You're trying to do your best to answer these questions as quickly as you can in a DM, right? And I voice memo people back. So my heart is really with this. Like, I've always loved talking about parenting. That's what my friends and I talked about. We discussed it at length. What about this? What's this book? How are you handling this?
Mhm.
And I've talked about it with my girls. I talked about parenting with my girls while I was raising them. They'd be like, "Well, why is Susie getting to whatever?" And I would, kind of frame it. This is why we're not doing that, or this is why we are doing this differently. And so I just tried to give them that framework and not, there's an element of because I said so in my life, but there's a large, much bigger framework of this is why. We have reasons. And I remember looking at one daughter and saying, when you have kids, you can make your own decisions. But
Mhm.
this is what dad and I feel are wise decisions in this area.
I also come from a family of girls. We have one brother, but I'm the oldest of five. So four girls and a boy. And then I have four girls, and you have five girls.
Yes.
So there's definitely a lot of that. I grew up asking my mom the same things. Mom, this, this sister did this. Aren't you going to fill in the blank? Aren't you going to like suggesting the parenting strategy? And she would be like, Haley, thank you for your input. And you can do a much better job than me when you're a mom.
Yeah.
Now I'm
Yeah.
like, I completely see some very close tendencies in my oldest daughter looking at like side eyeing me like, looks like you're not being or, oh, well, I had this, but you're not giving this to the younger one.
Yes.
And it's so hilarious. But we do tend to think we can do a much better job when we aren't actually parents yet.
For sure, and you can definitely see how other people should be doing it better
Yeah.
than they
Yeah.
are, right? Like, it's so much clearer outside the picture.
Yeah. I tend to see the things in others that I am myself already good at, but not so good. I'm not very critical of the things that I haven't yet figured out in my own motherhood or that I'm still struggling with. Like, for instance, being patient. Like, I might see, oh, I've already mastered this. So now I can see the lack of that in someone else, but I am still struggling with patience. And I somehow don't notice that they're extremely patient with their children and they just are lacking in this other area? So,
Yes. Yes,
sin.
I remember one pastor was saying, he was talking about doctrine and how you learn new doctrine and it's so exciting, and then you just wanna tell everybody about it and tell them they're wrong, that they were, and he said, "You can't just literally be one step ahead of them and turn around and whack them in the head with it. You're just one step ahead." And so it's kind of that idea that you do have blind spots and nobody has it all together, but, I learned a lot by watching my friends. Like I said, we talked a lot about it. I had wonderful parents who were very, you know I'm 58, so you can imagine the generation I grew up in. This is a rule, and we followed it, and I appreciated that, and I just kind of imbibed that, and I moved forward with that, and it served me well. At this point, I think the greatest part of this season is how it turns out, right? You're doing all these things as you raise the kids, and you're praying so much and trusting the Lord and pivoting when
Mhm.
you need to and holding firm when you think you need to. And you just are praying that the Lord will honor your efforts. And that's really all you can do, right? There's no guarantee. So I think that that's a little bit of rest at this point, that you know how it turns out, for good or ill. It's like, okay. This is where this got us.
Mhm. Yeah, that's encouraging to hear because although I have seen some fruit because I have a daughter that's almost 12, I can start to see like some of those early years of just like faithful, even just like teaching her Bible stories and taking her to church and teaching her theological truths from a young age is really manifesting in a very wise young lady. And I'm like, okay, this is just as I have a 20-month-old encouraging me to not grow weary in doing good, even though I've been at it for over a decade. Don't being able to see some of that fruit already in her life as a young woman is very encouraging. And so I can't imagine getting to look back on all of it. Although, of course, you're confronted with, I could have done this better and I'm sure I didn't do as well here. At least you're getting to see the fruit of some of that. And that's got to be really, really encouraging.
It is encouraging, and I think the main thing too is to I've seen other parents parent very well, and some of the children, the Lord will do with your children what he will do. So my goal was always to be able to look back and know that I hadn't given up, I hadn't grown weary, just tossed in the towel and, oh well, that is what everyone's doing, so I'll just do that. That was my goal, that I would leave it to the Lord, but I would be faithful with what I knew to do. And so that feels good. Like you can trust the Lord with the outcome because there are no guarantees. He's in charge of hearts and we are to do our part.
Yeah. So the reason that I first reached out to you, and I think one of the first reels that I found you from was the one that you talked about. I did not lose my identity when I became a mom. And that just struck such a chord with me because that is the message that I was fed as a young mom. I would call myself maybe now a mom in the middle years, I mean, I still have littles, but I'm not brand new. And I do remember though being fed this message really hard, especially when I had toddlers for the first time, the 0 to 2 to 3 years. I remember hearing how important it was that I find something that is mine outside of just being a mom. And I believed that and I actually pursued that pretty strongly and fervently, I would say for the first like 6 to 8 years of being a mom. I truly believed that that was like super important for me. I can't lose my identity. I need to have something that's mine outside of being a mom because it's not enough. Who am I as a person? And I really distinguished this. And then these identities competed. And so I had mom Haley versus entrepreneur Haley. And what does she need? And what does she want to build? And what's her dream? And I was really at war, I would say, with like the season that I was in and constantly competing for what I thought I needed to be happy, which you can imagine how that played out competing against my husband's career, like in actually needing to provide for our family while I'm building this like fun, fun money career and, with the time that I could have in the margins of also being a mom. And it is only really in the last, I would say like 5 years that I have realized just the I don't know, utter emptiness of that pursuit and how wrong-headed I was in thinking that way. So your reel really resonated with me and I was just like, man, I wish that I could have seen this early on and I wish that I would have had ears to hear. So I might not have been so foolish with those years. So that's just why I reached out to you. But I'd love to hear more about where this is coming from and where that idea came from for you.
Well, the idea came directly from a question from a comment in on one of the other reels. And it really struck me because I think it is a huge, I mean, you just see it everywhere. Well, that's fine. You're a mom, but what else are you? What else are you doing? And I just thought, when she said, how did you not lose your identity? I really had to think about it because I thought, I almost don't understand the question. I was a mom. That literally became my identity. And I was proud to be the girls' moms. I was reading, I treated it as a job. Like, I took it seriously. I read parenting books. I read home education books. I just threw myself into it. I was like, this is the gig and I'm going to be the best at it that I can be. So I had to really struggle with it. And then I thought there really is this idea that you need the side hustle or something to fulfill you. And I just wanted to express that it's so fulfilling to raise these little people. You've been given this little tiny child who will, Lord willing, grow up and leave your home. And, if you have a special needs child, that's a whole extra layer. And so, how do you get that person? How do you steward that person? And how is that a side job? How is that not enough to keep your brain and your body busy for 18 years? I've told my girls, I was like, I just think people aren't working hard enough at it. They aren't thinking about it. And
Mhm.
so they think they need more. It's not a boring job. It's actually an overwhelming job. And I think
Yeah.
that they probably want to get out from under that more than that it's boring. Does that make sense? Like
Yeah.
it's easier for me to make reels than it was to raise kids.
Right.
That's more fun.
Yeah.
And people are
Right.
gonna be like, "Oh, you're so smart. This is so great." And there aren't a lot of people saying that to you when you're raising your kids. The kids don't for a lot of years. And my husband is wonderful, so he really did. But I think that was kind of where I was coming at when I was making the reel.
I want to interrupt this episode to tell you about one of our sponsors for today's episode, and that is Good Book Mom. Good Book Mom just launched her brand new 50 states picture book list. You will want to check this out. This list contains a rich mix of true stories, stories inspired by real events, tall tales, and beautiful fiction that captures the heart of each state in our country. Every state and DC is represented with 2 picture books plus a few extra gems along the way, giving you plenty to explore as a family. Whether you're using this for summer reading, homeschool, family read aloud time, or to celebrate our country's 250th anniversary, this list is designed to make it easy and enjoyable. You can get it inside a Good Book Mom membership, which I have a discount code for. That is Haley25, and that gives you $25 off a yearly membership, making it just $74. Or you can purchase this list individually at Good Book Mom's website. I personally will be using this with my girls because we are focusing in on American history this year. I actually just shared on Instagram yesterday that we had kind of paused our regular history reading and we are doing a children's American history book. And so this is coming at the perfect time for us to dig in. It'll give us some stuff to request from the library, which everyone knows is my, not favorite place in the world. But if I can request some books, go pick them up and not have to deal with all the woke stuff, then I'm golden. Check out Good Book Mom's 50 States picture book list and grab yourself a membership so you can get all of her amazing book lists at goodbookmom.com. Use code Haley25. Yeah, something you just said there could be its own episode in and of itself, but you said this is not a boring job. This is an overwhelming job. And it's like you could read all of the books, the how to meal plan, how to run a home and have a cleaning schedule, and then and there are entire books on all these topics, and then how to train your kids to be contributing members of the family, and then parenting and discipline and shepherding your children's heart, discipling them, pouring biblical truth into them, all of these different topics.
Yes.
Our entire books, our entire lifetimes of expertise, full of wisdom, full of information, full of trial and error, and it's like we think so little of motherhood that we put it into this category of just kind of keeping the kids alive, just the tasks of getting them breakfast, cleaning up the breakfast, getting them to where they need to go, picking them up from that, or shuttling them to the sports, and then people enter the era. You'll even see this reflected a lot on Instagram content and reels and such. Like, I'm just the chauffeur. I mean, there's an entire category of reels just based on that. But it's like we do really view it as just this series of seasons and the tasks associated with that season, instead of, like you are describing, an entire identity, life pursuit, an entire category of this is the gig, this is my job, this is my career, this is the career of my life. And if I look at it that way, how will that change how I approach it?
Yeah, I think too many people look at it as an unpaid nanny. Sure, when they focus on, I'm just driving people, I'm just making meals, I'm just doing laundry, I'm just wiping bottoms. Yeah, I mean, you could hire all of that out. But that is not that this is your little person. This is your child. And while you're doing all of those tasks, you're loving them and caring for them. And how do you spend one-on-one time with kids? That's it. I mean, in the car, you're driving, you're talking. Those tasks are the togetherness in some regard. doesn't have to be going to Disneyland with one child for it to be good one-on-one time. It doesn't have to be anything besides, "Hey, I'm gonna go cook these chicken breasts. Come with me and let's talk while I'm doing it." And so I think there's such a focus on, you know, the bodily function parts of motherhood, and that's not the highlight reel, right? But if you focus on that, you're missing all of what is happening raising the children.
You have another reel talking about the tasks of motherhood were kind of the substance of how you formed relationships with your kids, which is kind of what you're talking about now, but you said it way more eloquently, but do you remember that one and what you said there?
Well, again, it was someone, I'm sick of all these tasks. And I just thought the tasks are the care. You're sure you're changing a diaper, but you're talking, you're having eye contact, you're laughing. It's not, it's not a nothing moment. It can be a big moment. How are you? No, don't roll over. All of those things. Potty training. This is a character thing too. All of the tasks build into your relationship with the child? Can they trust you to come when they call you because they're being potty trained and they need help? Can they trust you to help them with their school because they're struggling and you're going to come? And yes, that's a demand and you're doing something else, but you're training them that you're trustworthy and you're helping them to learn. And so I just think I was talking to a friend and she had a friend who was just, I have to go to work. I can't. This is too much. And I said, she is just focusing on the tasks. She is not focusing on the relationship. And some of those, dirtier tasks from the early years go away. And you end up with this relationship and this person who trusts you because they have seen you care for them. So they brought you their poopy diaper. And now they're bringing you this guy at the co-op is acting weird. What do I do with this? And
Mhm.
you're trustworthy. And that relationship has been the result of all those tasks.
I do I like the analogy of the poopy diaper and the guy just both being, we wanna get rid of those just to avoid it. No, I'm
Yes,
kidding.
yes,
I'm
exactly.
kidding, I'm kidding.
Both go the same place.
That's so rich. So one of the things that you talk about is, that the relationship is super important, that these tasks are what form the trust, form the bond, form the child feels cared for by the mom because you're there to do these tasks. So I'm curious what kind of feedback you've gotten from moms who are like, maybe I don't know if you have a lot of followers or people who are watching who are, working moms who have children in daycare, that sort of thing, who are maybe not there for those types of things. Have you gotten pushback against some of those concepts from moms that are maybe like, well, that you're diminishing the relationship down into these everyday tasks just because 'cause I'm not the one doing it doesn't mean my child doesn't love me or know that I care for them, those types of ideas?
Yeah, I have not gotten any blowback
Okay,
on there.
good.
I am careful. I'm not trying to beat a drum about those kind of things. Like people have to do different things. I'm not trying to prescribe what everyone should do all across the board of their lives. Does that make sense? So where people have been, well, I work this amount of time and my husband works the other amount of time. And I think it was something about a schedule. The nanny, we're getting a better nanny or whatever. And I said, well, hopefully the nanny will help you with your routine. So it's not, to me in that moment, it's not the time to go, why are you working anyway? You should probably stay home with your kids, So I'm trying to address her question where she is. And the biggest blowback, and I have actually had hardly any negative response. And
Which is shocking. You must come across as so nice, nobody would wanna be mean to you because that's amazing.
I'm shocked because I'm not mincing words. Like I said, I'm not looking to pick fights or add guilt to someone who already may have some of that. But the biggest blowback I've had is I talked about training your children to obey last week. Don't say train and obey, Haley. Those are,
Yeah, yeah.
and I really had to ponder it. I told my husband, I said, well, I'm sorry, the Bible says train and obey. So I think I'm in good company. And I thought more about it. I thought, we don't have any problem with saying, oh, my daughter's training to be in the Olympics. She's training to be a good swimmer. And so I just think you're training your child to be an adult. And that takes work. It takes work to reach a goal. And so we are training them. And I can't help it that people don't like that word, but of all the things that is, and I even had one woman say, "Oh, I really don't like her terminology, but she is being loving and compassionate as she says this." So I thought, okay, that's how she read that.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, so you can imagine if you're having to think about it and ponder it for a second and you've successfully raised 5 girls, imagine that, 21-year-old newly married woman who's maybe trying to get pregnant, starting to researching these topics and going like, we want to start a family and how do I do that? What is the latest Christian parenting strategy and method and who's the voices in that realm? And they come across those types of ideas that, obeying is, yeah, that's outdated. That's, hey, well, what we know now is that the psychologists have discovered that the human brain cannot actually handle negative feedback or negative consequences. That's never okay. We can't, it'll traumatize them. And then you're like, oh my goodness, well, yeah, that's true. I didn't like discipline either. So I guess that makes sense. And then all of a sudden you're down this rabbit hole of really trying to, out of a good motivation, to be a good mom, to be a good, parent, but suddenly being led astray into all kinds of vain philosophies.
Absolutely. And I think it's very natural that, I pivoted a little bit from what my parents did. I had a great upbringing. I didn't reject them, but I did pivot. And so I think pivoting is great. Even one of my daughters said, "Well, you would tell us if we were going off the rails, when you?" And I said, "I absolutely, if I saw danger ahead, I'm going to pull you back from the cliff, but I'm going to be very careful not to be like, well, we didn't do it that way. Why are you doing that?" Because you might be pivoting in a way that is within the realm of good. And now I'm forgetting where but I think the pendulum, I think instead of pivoting, so many people are like 180. And even hearing some of the terminology, they'll like you said, I do remember I didn't really like when my parents did that negative consequence. I'm never doing that. Even though I feel like there's so many young women that are like good, godly, strong, good women, and they are really negative on how their parents raised them. And I'm like, look at how you are, right? Like there
Mhm.
could be a correlation. I understand they weren't perfect, but there really could be a correlation with how you as a person are
Mhm.
and what your parents did to raise you.
Right. What would you say is the worst trend in parenting right now, parenting content? Because that's probably your algorithm is showing you that kind of stuff. But what would you say is like one of the biggest misses, or like your daughter asked, if we were headed off a cliff, you would say something. Where do you see women and mothers specifically heading off a cliff?
I think the biggest thing I see is women not taking a little control of the kids and the home. And I see them frazzled and being ruled by these little hellions, for lack of a better word. And I have told my daughters before, I'm like, you have the crown. You're the queen of the house. Put the crown on, straighten it up, and get a little control here. And control doesn't have to look heinous. Like I always talk, I'm just like, let the children know what is coming next.
Mm.
Control is like a fence, and they know where they are and they feel safe. It's like the guardrails on the road. You can come over here, but when you bang against that, we're going to bring you back because over here is a cliff. And so I think the pivoting or the jettisoning of everything that my generation grew up with, sort of, like if I went to my friend's house, they had the same rules largely that I did. If
Yeah.
I got in trouble with my friend at something, she was also getting in trouble at her house about the exact same thing.
Right.
Right. And so I think this whole pioneering idea of we're just going to let these precious little people sort of raise themselves and we'll
Hmm.
just drive them around to the things they want to do and let them know we love them constantly by doing that. I think it's a terrible idea. And I don't think it's working. If you go out anywhere, it's just not working.
I want to pause to tell you about our next sponsor, and that is Foundation Worldview. And for this ad, I wanted to actually ask my husband if he has noticed any changes in our girls' understanding or grasp of world views since we've been using Foundation Worldview curriculum. So, Joey?
They absolutely have a better grasp on the worldviews of multiple different religions and people groups, and then how those worldviews compare to the biblical worldview, if they're true or not, where they get their source of truth or their understanding, and they're more confident in explaining it, and all those things. So they're absolutely better equipped, more confident, and know how to recognize falsehood out in the wild.
There you go. You heard it here first. Check out foundationworldview.com. Use code Kindled10 for $10 off your license for any family license. They have classes for students all the way from 3 years old up through 13 years old. So check it out for your homeschooled students. Even if your kids are not homeschooled, maybe this is something you want to do on the side to actually, talk through these things with a guide and help to make sure you're covering all the right ground, asking all the right questions, really educating and discipling your kids in biblical worldview. So check it out, foundationworldview.com. Use code Kindled10 for $10 off. Well, and I love that analogy. You're the queen of the house, but it is like moms have put the crown on their children and said, you're the king of the house. You're the queen. And you see this reflected in so many ways. You see this on, those reels of women kind of laughingly, jokingly, they may say, they'll have a video of their daughter and say like, someone is going to have to deal with her attitude someday. Good luck. Or someone is, I pity the man who has to, whatever. I can't remember how they phrase it, but it's making it light and making a joke out of the fact that their daughter is so strong-willed, and whoever has to deal with her someday, yeah, good luck, buddy. You'll see what we've had to deal with. And it's this, for a minute, you're like, haha, I get it. Anyone with girls gets that. But that is the problem. You don't then celebrate their propensity to be little tyrants, like we all are, because we're sinful and we want our way and our flesh demands it. And you actually have to train them in righteousness, in what God's word says. Like, we're not going to demand our way. You're not going to get what you want just the second you want it, just because you want it. You're going to wait. You're going to ask your turn. You're going to wait for your sister to be done with that. The answer might be no, or you're not going to get the same toy this time because everything isn't fair in life. All of these things that it's like women are too afraid to say, but now we're just outright celebrating the sin and making it our identity. And they're like proud of it that their daughters are just little boss babes, essentially.
Yes. Yeah. It's astonishing. I mean, there was a VRBO commercial. It might still be going on. And my husband would see it and is like, oh, this is such a great VRBO. We love the hot tub. And the mom and the teenage daughter are in the hot tub. And the dad comes walking over and makes some motion or says something about getting in the daughter's like, forget about it, Bruce. And he walks away. And they're like, oh, daughter. They make some set. And I was like, what?
Yeah, yuck.
Yeah. So it is a pretty pervasive thing. And the thing is, if this was generating like really happy relationships and these kids were super happy and the mom was super happy, forget that it's just absolutely unbiblical and terrible for society as a general rule. You could almost see why people would want to do it. But the very women who are putting the crown on the kids are the ones saying, they're driving me crazy. I don't like this. I need some me time. I've lost my identity. And so I just want to go, no.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole other way over here. And it's a good path. It's a lot of work, but it is so worth the effort.
Yeah, it is. It is sad and hard to see that when you talked about, when you would get in trouble and you would go to a friend's house or you would see that the standards were similar. That's been so lost because of this very individualized approach to everything. Like, everyone is so unlike the crowd, well, my child has this diagnosis. My child needs this. And we've become so in tune with often our own inventions, our own creations, our own like visions of what we think our child is or needs or wants, that we've rejected any concept of like absolute truth or absolute goodness or, actually that it would be right to give a negative consequence to this behavior. We've lost that. And it's this communal, community-wide, nationwide, culture-wide rejection of truth, really, and just everything is subjective. Well, that may work for you. And there's obviously places within motherhood and parenting that it is nuanced, and, each kid is different, and learning styles can differ. And even the degree to which a child needs you to raise your voice and show how serious you are can differ. I have one child who barely had to be disciplined at all because she was just like a people pleaser, wanted to obey, so concerned about following the rules. And then another who literally couldn't care less and was like, "Ha, see if you can get me," So I totally know there's a difference in children, but there shouldn't be such a vast difference in standard for those children.
Agreed. Yeah. I feel like my friends and I talked about how are we going to manage this unruly behavior or this attitude? Like, I'm having this, and how would you approach this? And I feel like mothers today, at least what I'm seeing, you know, social media, and I just hear a lot of it amongst women. Oh, well, these kids, they're just like this. There's no thought of how could we rein this in? Like, what is this good, that strong willed child that's like, I think I know what I'm going to do. They end up like stalwart. You can rely on those kids. Do you know what I mean? But you have to harness and guide this will into good directions and not just roll over and let them have their way. And obviously, you and I have a biblical framework. Like, there's all kinds of biblical verses and principles to be giving to our children as we're raising them. And the world doesn't really have those. And I mean, they have them, but they're not going to take them, right? We don't like train and obey. Stay away from us. But it's such a help that we have that to go back to, and we're not just, I just don't like it when you tell me what to do at dinner. No, you can't talk to your mom that way because the Bible says obey your parents and all of these principles. So without scripture and that absolute truth, people are a little bit at sea. But I do get comments from people that don't indicate any kind of faith who are like, yeah, I have this kind of routine or this kind of standard in my house. So it's not just a Christian thing.
I was with some friends this weekend, and they were talking about how they have multiple kids, but their kids of the same age are friends. And so one mom will take the younger ones for a play date while the other mom takes the older pair, and they'll like just get to have playtime with their friend. And so, but they were saying one of them who had the younger ones made some bad choices while they were at her house. So the moms were agreeing on what was going to be the consequence for that. And they were talking about, they made these choices together. We want them to see that we are, not necessarily, we're not part of the same family, but we're unified in saying that this was wrong and that there is a consequence. And I just loved that they were even able to have that conversation and be like, yeah, they're going to have some consequences, and their older siblings are going to get to go to Chuck E. Cheese and have this fun outing, and they're not going to get to. And the idea of there even being such a thing as disobedience, and that obedience can be expected, and that training is good, and that disobedience is bad, and that sinning is wrong, not just because you're going against mom and dad, but because you're disobeying God, who says, children, obey your parents. All of this is just so embedded in that conversation. And for that to even happen, had to be so many other foundational things in place. And I just reflected on how rare that is for parents to be able to find, someone else that might have a shared standard. And these are friends of mine who go to my church. And so, of course, there should be some commonality there. But, I think so many moms are lacking that. And so without that community to say, yeah, I think you're right on with that. I would agree with that there needs to be some pain associated with that choice. While you still can, there needs to be a consequence because you love your child and you're trying to prevent them going further down this road that ultimately will harm them, and that leads to really just indulging the flesh like fully, like making the flesh king. And we all know that if we are not stopped, that is our propensity. That is our sin nature without the Holy Spirit and without, being given changed hearts and minds. But even as we are raising our children, it's a bit of a fake it till you make it. You don't just say, well, I'm not sure if they're Christian, so I'm not going to like give them a standard or show them what truth is or expect obedience. You are training, you are showing, you are walking that out. So I'd love to hear more, what are your thoughts on that as you're raising kids, and, whether that's with community or with this shared standard, what that looks like.
Yeah, I think that the community is helpful, and I didn't have thousands of friends. I have a few that were close.
Mm-hmm.
And they were not kids that were perfect. but they were kids who, if they did, in my house, A, B, and C, not allowed, let's just say. And then we would get together with people, A, B, C, also not allowed. Okay. A, B, C happens, right? But all of us are like, not going to happen anymore. And so if we would get together with someone and A, B, C is no problem for them, that was often the last time, or very controlled situations. So I was extremely careful. And I realized, just like we said before, like our kids, your kids are good at some things and other kids are better at other things. So I am in no way implying that the other family might have gone home and said, those kids were terrible at D, E, and F. So I would have maybe been exporting things to other families that they didn't like. But I was very careful about that. And I think that's okay. I'm glad I did that. And if we ran into behaviors, different places, like different events we were part of or whatever, I was very careful to say why we didn't like that behavior, what that behavior was indicating could be a problem in the future. And it wasn't just, oh, I don't like Alice. It
Right,
was,
right.
I like whatever. And I also think early on, I think the problem people have with training and discipline is they think you're just constantly picking and yelling at your kids. And I want to say, if you are consistent, and I did do a reel about this, if you are consistent early and always, it cuts it so
So
much
much. Yeah.
because you are this wall and the
Mhm.
kid comes up to it, and every time you are there. If you move it over here, he's going to wrap and go, oh, and he's going to keep trying that because they are gamblers. They're going
Mhm.
to keep trying. And so the more firm you are early, the less harsh you actually have to be, and the less guff you get, and the less discipline. And I'm talking mainly negative consequences here. The less
Mhm.
of that you have to mete out
Right.
because they're like, we're not trying that. I mean, my sister, I'll tell on her, she was in high school and her friends were like, why don't you just sneak out with us? Just come on, your mom will let you just sneak out with us. And she said, I just looked at them and said, have you met my mother? And that's kind of
Mhm.
the idea. You
Mhm.
want your kids to be like, she's there when I need her, and she is there when I need her this way as
Yeah.
well. And
That's so
so I
good.
think you need to be there consistently. Obviously, 100% was not, but really, really, the guardrail is always there. No, that's not going to happen. And quickly, no, stop doing that. That's
Correct.
never
Yeah.
allowed. Rather than, oh, I'm tired, he's tired, oh, and then you snap, and that's the ugly
Yes.
that I see out so much.
I want to take a second to tell you about our next sponsor, and that's We Heart Nutrition. I love We Heart Nutrition as a company. I take their vitamins every single day. The ingredients are bioavailable, so your body can absorb them. You will feel so much better once you start taking them. When I forget to take my morning vitamins, I notice by around 1 p.m. that I'm feeling a little more sluggish, a little less energy, and a little less able to take on the second half of my day. So, I, for one, have noticed a huge difference. I love the company, love what they stand for and their values. Of course, the product quality is the main reason to buy from them. But when you know that your support of this conservative Christian owned company is going to pro life pregnancy centers, that definitely makes you feel better about the money you are spending on your supplements. Check them out at weheartnutrition.com and use code Kindled for 20% off your first order. And if you subscribe, you get an extra 10% off. So that's a total of 30% off at weheartnutrition.com. Use code Kindled for 20% off. Yeah, and I'm guilty of that because I do sometimes fall prey to I want to be fun mom. I want to be nice mom. I want to say yes. I want to meet that need or that request. I want to stop being asked. And so I'm just like, okay, fine. Okay, 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 okay. And then it's like a hesitant yes or a hesitant allowance. And then the thing that I was supposed to guard against happens, the thing that I knew I should say no for this reason occurs. And now I'm mad at who? The child. Because I'm like, oh, I knew this was going to happen. See, this is why I said that. But now I'm impatient. Now I'm frustrated. Now I'm irritated. I should actually be mad at myself, right? Not them, because it's my fault for not being consistent. It's my fault for not doing what I know is right. And I thought, I in the moment kind of fell prey to some other thing than what I knew I should do. And I see that all the time. But when I'm consistent and when I am, when I say no early and often, and it's not no to everything, but no to the things I should say no to consistently, I don't get to that place of utter frustration and exhaustion as often because I'm just like, no, I'm not going to budge here. We said this, don't ask again. I- We're not having a conversation every single time because when I said we're not going to have a snack if it's past 3:30 and it's now 4, you're like so hungry every single day. If I sometimes say yes, sometimes say no, well, of course, I should expect to be asked that every single day, even though I've said it. But if I say, remember when I said 3:30, I really mean it. So don't ask me again. It's not like I'm not going to change it based on, now I could choose to do that if I'm like, hey, my kid had whatever, exceptionally physical, rough day and they're very hungry. Of course, I can be understanding of them. But my point is that it's like the standard has been set and now I get the freedom to move that bar if I would like to show grace, to show understanding. Yes, but I'm not dealing with the constant onslaught and barrage of requests every day that leads to me going, oh my gosh, stop asking me.
Yeah, and I think this is part of the mothering that takes so much of your brain, right?
Hmm.
This isn't something you just do on the sidelines. What if we're making a rule, why are we making it? And can we enforce it? And do we want to enforce it? Because if you're just throwing these rules out, you're not going to keep them. And you're just begging for these little gamblers to come pushing up against them all the time. And I mean, you're the same way, or I'm the same way. I'll try things. I'll be like, well, I'm going to try this again. I did get through. We are gamblers. Even if I'm
Hmm.
trying to think like a website won't load. You just keep going in the hopes that it will happen because it usually does. And if the kids think, well, usually about the third or fourth time I ask her, she caves. You're asking for them to pester you 3 or 4 times. It's kind of like the counting. Wait till I count to 3. Just count
Hmm.
on doing that all the time.
Yeah. They don't know how to bay on 1 or 2 because
Right.
you haven't ever required it.
You might not like the word, but you have trained that child to
Yeah.
not do anything until you start counting.
Such a good point. You are always training. Just because we disagree on how to train doesn't mean you're not training. Everyone's training. You're training them
Yes,
to do something.
absolutely.
One of your other points that I really love, and we kind of touched on this, is you say, that you didn't do a bunch of play dates as a mom. And I actually completely agree. I did not. I tried it more when my kids were little. I hated it for the reasons that you're saying about those friends where, and when I was a young mom, I had moms, that gentle parenting concept was new and I didn't know what it was called yet. Or it wasn't maybe new, but it was very trendy. It was picking up a lot when my oldest and second were like, 4 and 5. Um, and I remember seeing it in real life at play dates and not having a name for it, but being like, what is happening here? Whoa, he is being encouraged to punch a pillow instead of his sister. He's being encouraged to throw this at the wall and not her head. And I was like, well, I don't want my girls in that environment. I don't want them to see this as though this is how we handle our anger. And now they are afraid, like, is he going to throw it at me? Because he's just, it's just the direction is all that's wrong, right?
Right. Right.
And so that kind of set me off on this trajectory of being very like picky about the friends that we spent time with and the playdates that we said yes to. I try to be nice about it always, and I'm never going to say, oh, because your son is a terror or whatever, even if that was the case. But you talk about raising peer independent kids and not thinking that you kind of, what's this like modern cultural wisdom? It takes a village, that we're raising our children in a village, that kind of concept. So could you talk more about that?
Yes. Yeah, I had the same experience as you did. And again, I had
So
an
it wasn't new. Okay.
no. Well, right. I mean, there's always been people that just, and I think it's like an instinct. And that's kind of what I want to empower this. I'm going off, but I'm sorry. Empower people. Like, I think some of women do have a little bit, I don't like this, but all I'm being told is it's okay. That's a child. You've got to let them express themselves. And I'm going to say, not every time. No, if you are being infringed upon your conscience with the way this child is acting, you may and should put the guardrails up. And so that's kind of what I want to encourage people if they have an instinct to go with that, because I don't think they see that. So yeah, we would import sometimes, I'd go home and there would be some new behavior that I was like, oh, we didn't actually have this before, but I saw this at that play date and now we've got it and I've got to stamp it out. And again, like I said, Lucy might have gone home with her kids and said, those Thomson girls. So it can go both ways. So I pretty much curbed that. And honestly, 2 or 3 of my very dearest friends moved away right after my third child was born. And I kind of lost like my village. Like they were like-minded people and they moved away. And so I kind of naturally shrunk my crowd that way. And we lived a little bit outside of town. And the peer independence, I read so much when I was thinking about homeschooling, and it
Mhm.
really resonated with me. Like, we don't want our children to listen to their peers more than they're listening to an adult, namely
Right.
us. And so we had friends. I mean, the girls have friends. They had a lot of
Mhm.
friends, but they weren't constantly going off with the friends. They
Mhm.
weren't the predominant input in our girls' lives. And I do not regret that one bit. And I would encourage everyone to think about that. And you have to kind of provide some fun, right? Like you don't just provide, well, we just stay home, we don't have friends, you're not going to have all this influence from other people. No, we had fun. We did all kinds of things here so that it almost didn't occur to someone on a Friday night to want to go somewhere else because we were doing something.
Yeah.
So I think you got to be careful. It's not a vacuum that you're providing. We were actively, again,
You're pouring in family time. Right.
yeah, this is a whole big job. We're not like fitting this in on the sides. What are we going to do as a family this weekend?
Mm.
So that's
Right.
my peer independence. Their peers are great, but they also, I said in that one post, most of the trouble I got into was with my friends, right?
Yeah.
And I was a good kid. I was a rule follower,
Same.
but
Yeah.
the peers, it is a strong influence. And the Bible says bad company corrupts good morals. It does not say your kids are a light and they will bring everybody up to your level when they go play.
Right. Man, we need that on a coffee cup. So, even as your daughters got older, would you say, because this is something I hear, and I'm sure you heard all the time with girls, oh, just wait for those teenage years and they just go off and I mean, hey, it's the attitude, it's how they talk to you. That's what I'm told to be very scared of. And then it's, I don't see my kids anymore. They just spend all this time with their friends and they're just never home. They're always with their friends. And I'm kind of like, are these your children or are these adults living in your house? Because you're acting like you have zero influence over their lives. And I do understand sports. I get clubs. I get there's involvement. Once they drive, I get there's more freedom. But do we just do we absolve ourselves of all influence over our children's time and how they spend it and where they go at a certain age? Like, I'm not there yet. So tell me if that's the case. But I'm like, I don't understand why all of a sudden, like on a dime, my girls are just going to always be gone and I'm not going to see them anymore.
Yeah. No, I don't think that that has to be the way it is. No, I mean, it was our car. We didn't buy our kids a car. My dad told me when I turned 16, he said, I enjoyed buying my first car and you'll enjoy buying your first car. And we kind of passed that along. So no, we did not experience that. There were different things that came up that they would go do, of course, right? But they're never home. If two of my girls babysat a whole big bunch down the street for some neighbors. They had twins and they were gone a ton because they were babysitting. So that can happen, but that was gainful employment in my mind. And that was great. So I think that there is a lot of fear about that. But I would say that's why those early years are so important because you're gaining their trust, you're having fun with them, they like you enjoy being with them. I think probably these same people who are like, well, just wait, you'll never see them again, probably didn't enjoy seeing them when they were younger either. So, I mean, teenage girls are force, right? And so fun and so much going on with them that there are definitely going to be times you think, I mean, I can remember I would shut, I'd have something going on with the girls and I'd shut the door to our bedroom and look at my husband and say, this right here, this is why people say, I'm so sorry you have 5 daughters. It's like
Hmm.
this craziness. So there is a level of energy in those years, but they're so fun too. So I would never tell anyone, oh, I hated that. I think the hardest years for me probably were just like 11 to 13, where they don't really want to shower as much as they could. And, I didn't think girls would do that. I thought they'd be all, primpy.
Hmm.
But, so that was kind of an interesting, but I don't think you need to fear those years, but I think
Hmm.
you need to spend the time early making those relationships good.
Yeah, that's great advice. Man, I could truly talk to you forever. I hope you have a book coming out soon. Any thoughts? Any desire for that?
I do have thoughts and a desire. that is a huge task,
It
and
is.
I will. The Lord will have to give me some good, probably confidence and time. I have all these grandkids, and I want to spend time
Yeah.
with them and my husband. So I think I'm sort of scratching that itch because
Mhm.
I have
Mhm.
worked on one for several years, and my girl's like, "You need to write a book. You need to write a book," and I'm like, so this is scratching that itch, my little reels, and
Yeah.
so
Mhm.
we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, you just have so much wisdom, and I love your honest approach. You're very kind and nice. You come across very nice in your reels, but like you said, you're not mincing words. So I'm like, maybe that's just sanctification, and I'm gonna get nicer. Maybe I'll get nicer.
I think you're nice. I think you're nice. I don't know if it's the gray hair or I really do just want to help
Yeah,
people navigate this because it's such a precious time and it goes so fast. I know I have gray hair and you don't want to hear that, but it does. And you know already she's 12. Like, how did that happen?
yeah,
Right.
it's depressing.
And so I just want people to enjoy it. And some of enjoying it is applying yourself and identifying as a mom and make
Yeah,
it your career and study it and work hard at it. So,
right.
but
And it is enough if that's all you're doing. All, if that's all you're doing.
yes, it
Right.
can take all of you to do that job well. It really can take all of you to do that job well. And that's okay. And that's good years spent that way.
Yeah. Man, this has just been so encouraging, and I'll have you back on. We'll dive into one of these other topics. I'm sure you've got many more chat-worthy reels up your sleeve, but thank you so much, Kimberly. Where can people find you online?
Basically, Granny's Got Greens on Instagram. I also post them on Facebook, but I'm not very active on Facebook.
Yeah.
If I get comments there, I will do that, but it's much smaller on Facebook. I can only manage one
Yeah.
thing at a time.
Well, that's good. Facebook, actually, I have a Facebook page and I am the same way with it. I don't really pay attention to it, but whenever I do happen to see, it is mostly bots these days. It's just
Interesting.
a lot of very weird comments. I posted like a video that included some pictures, still photos of my girls when they were very little, laying on our carpet in our old house. And I got the angriest comment about how if I really loved my children, I wouldn't have carpet in my home because it has allergens, which can blah, 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 all this stuff. And I was like, is this person for real? Like almost every home has carpet. Like
Yeah.
what are you
Yeah.
talking about? You could be the
People have too
crunchiest.
much time on their hands, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. So again, yes, Facebook is not a priority for me, but I'll link all of that in the show notes, and people can find you. But thank you for the wisdom that you're sharing, and I hope God continues to bless your platform with lots of growth, so more moms can hear it.
I appreciate that very much. Thanks for having me on. It was fun to get to know you a little bit.
Thanks.